Welcome back to our study called Say You're My Wife, or Say You're My Sister. You should have said Say You're My Wife, right? But it's called Say You're My Sister. And we're looking at Genesis 12, 18 through 20. Man, I was trying to correct Abram right there. Anyway, today we're looking at the rebuke that Moses has in here. He records against Abram. So remember that Moses is writing this after his rebuke, after he's been rebuked by God, or really God's rebuke of Pharaoh. The Pharaoh had made Jacob's family into slaves, but God set them free. Now Moses goes back to the time when Pharaoh rebuked their forefather. So he's saying, okay, in the story of Moses, Pharaoh's been rebuked by God, right? Plagues have gone against Pharaoh. You got the firstborn dead and everything else like that. And so now Moses is writing after that one. But now when Moses is writing to recount the history of the Israelites, he goes back to the time when Pharaoh rebuked their forefathers. So he shows the flip there. So we see that somehow, we're not told, but Pharaoh ascertains that the plagues that are hitting his house are because Sarai is Abram's wife. We don't know why or how he knows this, but he does. And he calls Abram, the man of God, and he says, what is this you have done to me? Why did you not tell me that she was your wife? The Pharaoh is suggesting that he would have acted differently if Abram would have told him what was going on. See, he said, if you would have said this, I wouldn't have done this. So really, it's your fault, Abraham. Why are you doing this to me? So Pharaoh then sends Abram back to Canaan with Sarai and all the gifts that he had been given to him. See, it's pretty interesting. He doesn't take the stuff back. He says, just take the stuff and go. Here we have Abram, the great patriarch, the man of God, and later we'll read the friend of God, being rebuked by the nations. But wait a minute. Wasn't Abram supposed to be a blessing on the nations? Instead, because of his failure now, he was a curse on the nations. You see the problem here? You see the flip here? Abram was supposed to bless the nations, but what Pharaoh's saying, you've brought these curses upon me, you brought this plague on me. Why did you do this to me? That's a great question. That was a perfect rebuke because Abram knows he's supposed to bless the nations. But now he's cursing Pharaoh, which represents the nation. And it's interesting too how, this story is kind of paralleled with the Pharaoh in Moses' time. And you see that when the plagues come upon Pharaoh, in Moses' time, obviously he sends them out, and here the same thing happens again. They're just like, just get out of my face, get out of here. So you see this problem, because of what Abram has done, you got a curse, you got problems. Because of Abram's faithlessness, his doubting of God's promises, his trying to take things into his own hands, it causes problems for everyone. And really this is a recurring theme too, for Abram and for his offspring, and really for all of us too. It's a lesson that we need to learn. If we try to take things into our own hands, we're going to mess everything up. There's going to be some consequences, and they're not going to be good. And so we'll see that with Abram. Even though he's made his way out of this one, and he's on the better end of it too, really. God's blessed him, even though he was faithless, which is what God does, right? God often does that too. Sometimes you get horrible consequences. Sometimes you get horrible consequences and blessing at the same time. As the old phrase goes, God does work in mysterious ways. Sometimes we are like, why? What? I don't get it. And that's because we're human and God's God.